Hi, I'm Rashonda Kate. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading Behind the Scenes by Elizabeth Keckley. We are on, I think it's chapter 13. Let me look. It's chapter 14. We are on chapter 14. We made a little bit of progress last time. We'll make a little bit of more progress this time. Lizzie, you are not changed a bit. You look as young as when you left us in St. Louis years ago, said Mrs. Meem, my foster child. Kissed me again. Lizzie, you are not changed a bit. You look as young as when you left us in St. Louis years ago. And Mrs. Meem, my foster child, kissed me again. Here, Lizzie, this is Minnie. Minnie Pappin, Sister Mary's child. Hasn't she grown? And Miss Maggie led a tall, queenly lady up to me. Minnie, poor dear Miss Mary's child. I can hardly believe it. She was only a baby when last I saw her. It makes me feel old to see how large she has grown. Miss Minnie, you are larger than your mother was, your dear mother whom I held in my arms when she died. And I brushed a tear from each of my eyes. Have you had your breakfast, Lizzie? Asked Mrs. Garland. No, she has not, exclaimed her children in a chorus. I will get her breakfast for her. And Nanny, Maggie, and Minnie started for the kitchen. It is not necessary that all should go, said Mrs. Garland. Here is the cook. She will get breakfast ready. But the three did not heed her. All rushed to the kitchen and soon brought me a nice hot breakfast. While I was eating, the cook remained. I declare, I never did see people carry on so. Wonder if I should go off and stay 2 or 3 years if all of you would hug and kiss me so when I come back. After I had finished, and that was the cook saying that. After I had finished my breakfast, General Meem came in. He greeted me warmly. Lizzie, I am very glad to see you. I feel that you are an old acquaintance. I have heard so much of you through my wife, her sister, and her mother. Welcome to Rude's Hill. I was much pleased with his appearance, and closer acquaintance proved him to be a model gentleman. Rude's Hill, during the war, was once occupied by General Stonewall Jackson for his headquarters, which gave more than ordinary interest to the place. The location was delightful, but the marks of war could be seen everywhere on the plantation. General Meem was engaged in planting, and he employed a large number of servants to assist him in his work. About a mile from Rude's Hill was Mount Airy, the elegant country seat of the general's brother. The two families visited each other a great deal, and as both entertained plenty of company, the autumn months passed pleasantly. I wonder how long she was there. I was comfortably quartered at Rude's Hill and was shown every attention. We sewed together, talking of old times, and every day either drove out or rode on horseback. The room in which I sat in the daytime was the room that General Jackson always slept in, and people came from far and near to look at it. General Jackson was the ideal soldier of the Southern people, and they worshipped him as an idol. Every visitor would tear a splinter from the walls or windows of the room to take away and treasure as a priceless relic. That had to be annoying that this is the room you're staying in and random people are coming and stealing stuff off of it. Also, how long was she there and what did that do for her business? And is she being a seamstress while she's here, or is she just on vacation? Like, I have questions. It did not take me long to discover that I was an object of great curiosity in the neighborhood. I am sure she was. My association with Mrs. Lincoln and my attachment for the Garlands, whose slave I had once been, clothed me with romantic interest. Romance? We talked about that like way early in the book, and it's coming back around. Colonel Harry Gilmore, well known as a partisan leader in Maryland and Virginia during the war, was a frequent visitor at Mount Airy and Rude's Hill. One day I accompanied a party to a tournament, and General Meem laughed pleasantly over the change that had come to me in so short a time. Why, Lizzie, you are riding with Colonel Gilmore. Just think of the change from Lincoln to Gilmore. It sounds like a dream. But then the change is an evidence of the peaceful feeling of the country, a change I trust that augurs brighter days for us all. Okay, so the romantic interest, as we talked about earlier, isn't like kissy romance. It's the idea of a 19th century romance could involve kissy romance, but it was really more about emotion and emotional appeal. So that makes sense that people looked at her with romantic interest. I mean, she was a servant. I hate to call her a servant of the Lincolns, but that's what she was. She was their seamstress. And now she's staying down. She came south to visit the family who had enslaved her. And now she's riding around with some colonel from the Confederate Army, and they seem to be good buddies. Like that, I bet people were very interested in her. But I don't like what General Meme is talking about here when he's talking about her riding with Colonel Gilmore. Just think of the change from Lincoln to Gilmore. It sounds like a dream. But then the change is an evidence of the peaceful feeling of this country, a change I trust that augurs brighter days for us all. So he's saying, well, now that a formerly enslaved person is hanging out with a colonel of the Confederate Army, that means all is well in the U.S. Come on, man. I mean, let's talk about the power differential here for a moment. She is a formerly enslaved person. She's a business owner. She's Black and she's female. Just the perceived power that a white man who used to be a Confederate colonel, and who is they still are going by their military names. Like, let's not forget about that. They were defeated in the Civil War, but we're still giving them the deferential treatment of their titles for the Army that was going against the U.S. Like, it's just mind-boggling when you sit and you think about it. If ever there were a time that the country was like, let's buckle up and move on, I guess that was it. Except moving on didn't happen in the same ways for everyone. Okay, I'll keep reading. I had many long talks with Mrs. Garland, in one of which I asked what had become of the only sister of my mother, formerly maid to Mrs. G's mother. She is dead, Lizzie, has been dead for some years. A maid in the old time meant something different from what we understand by a maid at the present time. Your aunt used to scrub the floor and milk a cow now and then, as well as attend to the orders of my mother. My mother was severe with her slaves in some respects, but then her heart was full of kindness. Okay. My mom was severe, but she was so kind. It's not that we can't be people who are dichotomous and full of juxtapositions, because we are, but that sounds like that's buttering her up for something. She could be severe to her slaves, but she was so kind. Now let me tell you this story. Let's focus on her kindness, though. That's what I feel like is coming. My mother was severe with her slaves in some respects, but then her heart was full of kindness. She had your aunt punished one day, and not liking her sorrowful look, she made 2 extravagant promises in order to effect a reconciliation, both of which were accepted. On condition that her maid would look cheerful and be good and friendly with her, the mistress told her she might go to church the following Sunday, and that she would give her a silk dress to wear on the occasion. So, I need you to never look sad or upset because you're my slave. You're my maid. You do house chores. You serve me personally. You also milk the cow. You did something that got me angry. I punished you. You looked sad about it. I can't bear for you to look sad because I punished you. So you put your emotions in check. And as an inducement for you to put your emotions in check, I'll let you go to church on Sunday and I'll buy you a dress. What? Now my mother had but one silk dress in the world, silk not being so plenty in those days as it is now, and yet she gave this dress to her maid to make friends with her. I'm gonna give you my only silk dress. Now you have to be my friend. Because friendships can be bought and sold, because giving somebody a token is going to make them forget that you have enslaved them and have treated them poorly and make them your friend. Hogwash. I guess this is the part where she treated her slaves severely sometimes, but she was so kind. She was ever so kind that instead of manumitting her slaves, she gives them her only silk dress. 2 weeks afterward, Mother was sent for to spend the day at a neighbor's house, and on inspecting her wardrobe, discovered that she had no dress fit to wear in company. Oh my goodness, is she going to renege on this gift? Is she going to take this silk dress back? Let's keep reading. Ah, she had but one alternative, and that was to appeal to the generosity of your Aunt Charlotte. Charlotte was summoned and enlightened in regard to the situation. The maid proffered to loan the silk dress to her mistress for the occasion, and the mistress was only too glad to accept. I love it that it's a loan. What are the terms of this loan? Will she really get it back? What happens if she spills tea on it? Let's keep reading. All right. The maid proffered to loan the silk dress to her mistress for the occasion, and the mistress was only too glad to accept. She made her appearance at the social gathering, duly arrayed in the silk that her maid had worn to church on the preceding Sunday. We laughed over the incident when Mrs. Garland said, Lizzie, during the entire war, I used to think of you every day and have longed to see you so much. When we heard you were with Mrs. Lincoln, the people used to tell me that I was foolish to think of ever seeing you again, that your head must be completely turned. We know that Mrs. Keckley is not a person who is like, oh, I work for the Lincolns, and so now I can't talk to anybody. But you used to enslave her. Should she want to come and talk to you? Like, I get what Mrs. Keckley said about the feelings of love, but I'm still a little angry apparently. Okay, when we heard you were with Mrs. Lincoln, the people used to tell me that I was foolish to think of ever seeing you again, that your head must be completely turned. But I knew your heart and could not believe that you would forget us. I always argued that you would come and see us someday. Was it impossible for them to go see her? If she thought about her every single day, yet she never made any effort to go see her. Y'all, I'm on the struggle bus right now. I'm struggling. I mean, we weren't going to finish this chapter anyway, but you see me in the middle of my struggles. Okay, let's keep reading. You judged me rightly, Miss Anne. How could I forget you, whom I had grown up with from infancy? Northern people used to tell me that you would forget me, but I told them I knew better and hoped on. Ah, love is too strong to be blown away like gossamer threads. The chain is strong enough to bind life even to the world beyond the grave. Do you always feel kindly towards me, Lizzie? To tell you candidly, Miss Anne, I have but one unkind thought, and that is that you did not give me the advantages of a good education. What I have learned has been the study of after years. You are right. I did not look at things then as I do now. I have always regretted that you were not educated when a girl. I don't believe you. I don't believe that you regret not having educated your slave, whom it was illegal to educate and who it would not behoove you to have her educated. I do not believe that you have always regretted that. Perhaps you regret it in this moment. I feel like you've probably never thought about it before this moment. And if you have, it wasn't with regret, but maybe, like, I don't know you. Those are just my thoughts. I have always regretted that you were not educated when a girl, but you have not suffered much on this score since you get along in the world better than we who enjoyed every educational advantage in childhood. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I have always regretted that I haven't educated you, but you're doing so much better now than I am, and I had all the education that it clearly doesn't matter. You've made the best of things. Please. Oh my goodness. The pomposity, the audacity, the arrogance, the unmitigated gall. I'm going to keep reading. I just kind of feel like throwing the book down and taking a mental break, but I am pressing on. I remained 5 weeks at Rude's Hill. That's a long time. I remained 5 weeks at Rude's Hill, and they were 5 of the most delightful weeks of my life. Good for her. I designed going direct to Richmond, but the cholera was reported to be raging in that city, so I took the train for Baltimore. In Baltimore, I stopped with Mrs. Annette Jordan. Mrs. Garland had given me a letter to Mrs. Douglas Gordon, who introduced me to several Baltimore ladies, among others Mrs. Dr. Thomas, who said to me with tears in her eyes, "Lizzie, you deserve to meet the success for having been so kind to our friends in the days of the past. I wish there were more women in the world like you. I will always do what little I can to promote your welfare." So she met a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. After remaining in Baltimore a few days, I came to the conclusion that I could do better in Washington. So I returned to the capital and reopened my business. I love that she has the confidence to be like, I'll shut it down here, I'll try something else, I'll come back, I'll reopen. And her customers are like, "We are so glad you're back." I love that. In the spring of 1867, Miss Maggie Garland paid a visit to Baltimore. Before leaving Virginia, she said to some of her friends in Lynchburg that she designed going by Washington to see Lizzie. Her friends ridiculed the idea, but she persisted. Why would her friends ridicule the idea? Like, they met Mrs. Keckley and liked her and wanted to promote her welfare. Why would they ridicule the? Maybe these are her friends on Ruth Hill. I don't know. I'm exhausted, y'all. This has worn me out. Maybe I shouldn't get this involved in books, but I do. Thanks for being on the ride with me. We're going to keep reading a little bit more. I don't think we're at a good stopping point yet. Oh, we're going to finish this page, and then there's like a really long letter that we are not going to read today. We will read it next time. So let me finish this page. Her friends ridiculed the idea, but she persisted. "I love Lizzie next to Mother. She has been a mother to us all. Half the pleasure of my visit is that I will be able to see her." She wrote me a letter saying that she designed visiting me, asking if it would be agreeable. I replied, "Yes, come by all means. I shall be so glad to see you." She came and stayed at my rooms and expressed surprise to find me so comfortably fixed. Was she really surprised to find you so comfortably fixed? Because she had just said like 5 weeks ago, or however long ago it was, that Mrs. Keckley, having not had an education, didn't seem to hurt her at all because she was doing better than she was. Anyway, I cannot do better than conclude this chapter with 2 letters from my dear young friends, the first from Mrs. General Meem and the second from Miss Maggie Garland. These letters show the goodness of their hearts and the frankness of their natures. I trust that they will not object to the publicity that I give them. And we're going to stop here. We will read the letters next time. So we are reading Behind the Scenes by Elizabeth Keckley. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda. Until next time.